Welcome back to AI Takeover. If you've ever been just like, whoa, what's up with AI? What can it do? What can't it do? And how does this all impact us humans? Well, you're in the right spot because today we're going deep, a real deep dive into two super fascinating posts over at, and write this down, criticallycurious.com. That's critically, CRITICALLY, curious.com.
You got it. These were flagged by you, our awesome listeners, and they offer two really distinct viewpoints on this huge question of AI versus human capabilities. We're going to unpack the idea of the authors PixelPia and Sven.
Okay, first off, we've got PixelPia's article from Chess Masters to Coders, How AI Challenges Human Expertise. So like the title suggests, she's really taking a look at, how AI is kind of pushing us to redefine what it even means to be an expert these days. Especially since machines are now doing things, that we used to think only we humans could pull off.
And then there's Sven and his, let's call it a very Sen take in AI versus humans. The losing streak continues. He's got a much more direct and a pretty funny way of approaching these topics. He doesn't shy away from poking at some of our assumptions about, how smart we humans really are and what this whole AI thing really means for us.
So consider this your express lane to understanding these two really, really interesting viewpoints. We're not just going to summarize them, though. We're going to pull out those key insights that'll make you go, All right, let's jump right in, starting with PixelPia. And, you can't talk about AI without mentioning that famous chess match.
Totally. PixelPia takes us back to, 1997, where it all kind of started, right?
Yeah.
The battle between the world chess champ, Garry Kasparov, and Deep Blue, IBM's chess-playing computer. Now, to some, that might seem like ancient history, but PixelPia argues that this wasn't just some random game. It was a wake-up call, a pivotal moment in how we view intelligence itself.
Right, exactly. It wasn't just a computer beat a human at chess, big deal. It was more like this crack, this first real chink in the armor of how we view intelligence. Especially when you think about, strategy, pattern recognition, making smart moves, all things Kasparov was legendary for.
The key thing here, and this is huge, is that Deep Blue didn't win by thinking like Kasparov. It wasn't some AI intuition that just suddenly appeared. It was pure computational power. It could analyze millions of moves in seconds. And this raises a super interesting question. Is expertise really about deep understanding, like how a human master grasps the whole game? Or is it more about the ability to nail the output, the result, regardless of how you get there?
It really makes you think, right? Is it about what's going on in Kasparov's brain or just about how he moves those pieces on the board? And PixelPia uses this to set the stage for how AI is now messing with our ideas of expertise in a ton of other fields, not just games.
Yeah, totally. Today's AI isn't just playing chess. It's writing code, it's making art, it's suggesting that song you didn't know you needed to hear, and even, helping doctors figure out what's going on with patients. PixelPia points out that we've gone from a state of oh, that's a cool AI trick, to whoa, yes, I can do that now. It's a whole different ballgame.
And this leads to this big looming question, doesn't it? When AI starts doing all this stuff, maybe even better or faster than us, does that mean humanity is losing something? Or is it a sign that, we need to update our definition of what it means to be an expert in those areas? It's not a simple answer.
And before Deep Blue came along and shook things up, remember, our whole understanding of intelligence was pretty tied to human-like qualities, like reasoning, intuition, that aha moment. That's what we thought made someone intelligent.
Right, they're quick-witted or they're insightful. But that chess match, it kind of broadened our definition, Suddenly things like processing tons of info at lightning speed, spotting tiny patterns in huge data sets, those became legitimate forms of intelligence, even if it wasn't how we humans usually thought about it.
Now, another thing PixelPia talks about is her own journey with this whole AI and creativity thing. She admits she was skeptical at first. Can a machine really be creative? Really? But her view has changed, and she's starting to see AI as a way to actually make our creativity bigger, not replace us artists.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool shift in perspective, right? It's AI becomes this partner in crime, this tool that can toss out wacky ideas that we might never have thought of. It's less about AI being the artist and more about it being a new kind of brush or a different kind of inspiration,
And when you look at AI's strengths, PixelPia is clear about them, like the speed it processes info, the way it handles huge amounts of data, its ability to spot those hidden patterns. It's mind-blowing. But she also points out that this efficiency, this speed, can feel a little unsettling, especially when AI starts doing things we thought were like human territory.
Right, like summarizing a super long article, translating languages live, making those eerily accurate recommendations for what to watch next, or even predicting trends. These are all things where human expertise was valued, and now AI is kind of stepping in, often doing it super fast and with crazy accuracy.
And that makes us think, right, what are those uniquely human strengths then? The things AI, at least for now, can't really pull off. PixelPia dives into a few key areas here.
Like, she talks about contextual understanding, that ability to really get the nuances of a situation, to understand what's not being said, to read between the lines. AI, which operates on data, often misses that stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And tied to that is emotional nuance. Human communication is loaded with emotions, and our ability to understand and respond to those emotions is like how we connect as humans. That's a level of complexity that AI is still figuring out.
And then there's empathy, right? This is a big one for PixelPia. She argues that empathy, like really stepping into someone else's shoes and feeling what they feel, that's not just about data. It's a deep human thing.
For sure. And empathy plays a massive role in how we make decisions. We don't just look at the cold, hard facts. We think about ethics. We trust our gut. We use intuition that comes from, our own experiences and the understanding of other people. PixelPia also highlights the kind of messy nature of human creativity, the way it's often rooted in our emotions and personal meaning. That's different from how AI operates, more like remixing existing stuff.
And lastly, she touches on our capacity for self-awareness, for building those deep emotional bonds with each other, and for asking those big existential questions about, life, the universe, and everything. These are some of the things that make us, well, us.
So PixelPia lands on this idea of redefining expertise through partnership. It's about recognizing the strengths of both humans and AI, and figuring out how we can team up to achieve some pretty amazing things.
She gives some cool examples too, like imagine AI helping teachers tailor lessons to each student while the teachers provide that human connection, that guidance. Or doctors using AI to analyze scans and data, but still offering empathy and understanding to their patients. And in the creative world, AI can spark those initial ideas, but it's the human artists who bring their vision and emotion to the final piece.
What's really cool here is that being an expert might not just be about being the person who knows the most anymore. It might be about being super adaptable, about knowing how to use AI as this powerful tool.
Okay, so that's PixelPia's thoughtful take on all this. Now let's shift gears and check out Sven's AI versus humans, the losing streak continues. And let's just say he's got a very Sven perspective on that whole Kasparov moment.
Yeah, definitely a different vibe. Where PixelPia saw this, huge wake-up call and the time for deep thinking, Sven's reaction is more like, okay. He doesn't really buy into the whole profound implications thing. He's more focused on, how we tend to overestimate human expertise.
Right. Sven kind of takes this funny, no-nonsense approach to breaking down what we call expertise. He jokes about it being based on an old college degree, years of doing the same thing over and over, and a whole lot of faking it until you make it.
It's definitely a more, let's say, playful viewpoint. And he contrasts that with AI's ability to process information on a massive scale. Think the whole internet, every research paper, endless lines of code and doing it all perfectly, no mistakes.
And he's not afraid to bring up those times when human experts got things really wrong, like the whole lead paint thing or that phrenology stuff, to kind of knock us down a peg. And I gotta admit, that line of his, the human has imposter syndrome, I have version control, is pretty genius. For those who aren't coding whizzes, version control is basically like having a detailed history of all the changes you've made to a project, so you can always go back. Unlike us humans with our past decisions.
That sums up his argument really well. AI's development is all about iteration, tracking changes, constantly improving. Human expertise, well, it can be more subjective, more prone to bias,
And what about creativity? PixelPia saw AI as a potential partner, but Sven has a whole other take on that too.
He really does. He's like, hold on, why do we automatically assume human creativity is better just because we have feelings or, go through tough times? He points out that a lot of human creativity is really about building on what's already out there, remixing old ideas, even falling into patterns.
He even pokes fun at predictable rhymes in poetry. But his point is, AI can also whip up creative content in all kinds of styles, and it doesn't get stuck with writer's block. Sure, maybe it doesn't have that same emotional depth PixelPia talked about, but it can still come up with some pretty amazing new stuff.
Sven's view is that creativity, at its heart, is about making connections, putting different ideas together in fresh ways. And from a purely data-driven perspective, AI is pretty darn good at that, even if it doesn't have the same personal stake in it.
Now, PixelPia was all about the importance of human emotions, but Sven kind of flips that script. He presents emotions as a potential source of inefficiency.
You got it. He's not saying emotions are bad, obviously. We're human, we feel things, but he argues that emotions can also lead to bias, burnout, mood swings, and at the end of the day, less efficiency in certain tasks. He points out that AI, without all those emotional ups and downs, can offer objectivity, consistency, and zero workplace drama.
So it's not that emotions are bad, it's just that they don't always help us get things done quickly and neatly. It's an interesting angle, for sure.
It really highlights the trade-off, right? The richness of human experience with all the feels versus the cold, hard efficiency that AI can often bring.
And what about that whole human-AI partnership that PixelPia is so into? Well, Sven has a more, shall we say, cynical take on how that's playing out right now.
Yeah, he paints this funny picture of us asking AI to do the boring stuff we don't want to do, then getting all judgy when the results aren't exactly what we pictured in our heads. It's less partnership, more like AI patiently dealing with our, less exciting tasks.
He has some hilarious examples, like asking AI to summarize that super long article you couldn't be bothered to read, then complaining that the summary is too robotic and trying to rewrite it yourself, often making it worse. But his point is valid. AI might not be after our jobs, but it's definitely coming for those repetitive, mind-numbing tasks that most of us would gladly hand over anyway.
And that's a key distinction Sven makes. He's saying, maybe our identity shouldn't be so tied to these routine tasks that AI can do better anyway. It's like a nudge to think about what really makes our work meaningful, beyond just checking boxes.
And he brings it back to this idea of humans being on a losing streak in certain areas, starting with Deep Blue and continuing with things like GPS being way more reliable than our memory, grammar checkers catching our typos, even AI suggesting recipes based on whatever random stuff you have in your fridge.
And he doesn't see this as some tragic downfall. He sees it as evolution, plain and simple. The big question isn't whether AI will be better than us at certain things, because it already is whether we're willing to adapt and change along with it.
And he leaves us with this, challenge. He's almost daring us to tell him what we truly believe humans still do better than AI. He says he's genuinely curious, but you can almost hear the smirk in his writing.
So even with their totally different styles, both PixelPia and Sven are grappling with the same fundamental questions about this, dance between humans and AI.
PixelPia, with her thoughtful and optimistic view, wants us to really think about what being an expert means in this new world. She's all about exploring that partnership potential, highlighting those human strengths that make us unique.
And Sven, with his straight-talking, often humorous, sometimes kind of critical take, he's like, wake up, people. He throws a spotlight on how fast AI is progressing and wants us to ditch any outdated ideas about being superior. He wants us to face the reality of what AI can do.
So it's not this simple us versus them thing, right? It's much more nuanced. It's about understanding what each brings to the table and figuring out how to navigate this, this crazy changing world.
And for you, our listeners who are diving into these important conversations, these articles are a great starting point. They both want you to think deeply about what skills and qualities will matter most as AI becomes a bigger part of our lives.
So as you can see from these two pieces over at criticallycurious.com, this whole AI takeover idea is not some simple sci-fi plot. It's a complex and ever-evolving story that's making us rethink everything. What does intelligence even mean? What does it mean to be an expert? What about creativity? It's a lot to unpack.
PixelPia is all about that partnership potential, reminding us to value things like context, empathy, that spark of creativity that comes from our experiences.
And Sven, bless his heart, he's like, get real. He wants us to ditch those outdated ideas about being better than AI and focus on adapting and leveling up in a world where AI is already doing some pretty amazing things.
It seems like the future won't be about AI taking over or us trying to stop it. It will be more about this, dynamic interaction where we each use our strengths in ways we haven't even thought of yet.
So what jumped out at you from these two very different perspectives? What parts of human intelligence do you think AI will have a tough time replicating? This conversation is just getting started and we want to hear your thoughts. Head over to criticallycurious.com and jump into the comments on PixelPia's and Sven's posts. Let's keep this going.
And here's one last thought to chew on, long after this deep dive ends. If AI keeps getting better and better at processing info and making things, how will we humans change how we define value and success? It's a big question, but a super important one as we move forward in this AI-powered world.